Okay, now we would like to get some JavaScript running on the front end, so it will essentially run after the PHP dynamically renders the block for the front end. And so in order to do that, I'm going to flip back over here to Visual Studio Code, where right now we're in this PHP file, but let's create a new file. So over here, I'm going to just say new file, and I'm going to call it frontend.js. There it is. I'm calling it that because it's JavaScript and it runs in the front end. And I'm just going to put in a quick, hi from frontend.js, just so we will know if it's running when we think we've got it running, and before we start trying to do much harder things. So there's that. And now we have a couple of problems that we got to solve. First of all, any JS like this index.js file, for instance, or our front-end JS, right now it's just one statement of absolutely vanilla JavaScript. But what we're going to be doing is putting React components in there, and those have to be translated into vanilla JS before they can be used on actual browsers out in the world. So there's a way that happens, and it's a tool called Webpack, and it's been specially configured and tweaked so that it by the WordPress folks, so that it it works within this block environment and understands what the pieces are. And so it's running. I haven't been running it because we've been working almost entirely in PHP, but it's run with a command called npm start run start. But it knows when you do that it's got to look for index.js, but it doesn't look for other JS files unless, well, it handles edit and save just because they're imported in index, but it won't just find a random file like frontend.js unless we tell it to, and we'll do that. We'll go to this package.json file. Here's the start script, and it knows to look for index.js by default, but we can also tell it specific files to look for, and those are, for whatever reason, called entry points in Webpack. And if we do decide to tell it specific files, then we have to tell it all the specific files. So we'll start by telling it that it's got to do index.js, but then we'll add frontend.js. And even though I'm not going to use it, I'm just going to grab these two and alter the build command the same way. Build runs that translation, or technically it's called transpiling operation once. Start runs it and then continues to watch for changes in the file. So when you save something that's changed, it will rerun this automatically. And so you don't have to worry about it, and stuff just kind of winds up automatically over in build. And we can see that if we do npm run start, and it will plow through those files. And if we did it right, then over here in build, we didn't do it right. Oh, because I didn't save package.json, so we're going to save that. And you notice Webpack ran again, but I've actually got to stop Webpack now because it won't pick up those file entry point changes unless we restart it. So there, I'm restarting it. And now if I've done things right, we're going to see a frontend.js file pop in here. Pop. There. And along with some other related sort of placeholders and markers and stuff, but that's the main thing. So that's working. So that's one thing out of the way. But we haven't actually told this block that we want to run this file, right? We're transpiling it, but we're not actually telling the system that we want the thing to run. And I'm just going to close build here because we don't ordinarily do anything to it. It just happens automatically. But I need to actually enqueue this file just like I would any other JavaScript file that I wanted to run in the WordPress environment. And I'm going to do that in this PZ the block function, which is what's doing the dynamic render. And these days, the Webpack, the WordPress version of it, one of the tricks that it knows how to do is to not load scripts or not enqueue scripts when the block in question isn't even being invoked. But just to be doubly sure, I'm going to invoke it here in the render function, and that way I know it won't be enqueued unless this is running, which means the block is definitely there. So we're going to run wp enqueue script. This takes a whopping 5 parameters. The first is just a tag. It just has to be unique. Then we've got to put in the got to put in the URL, and we'll do that by finding the system plugin dir URL for file. Right, so that'll give us the path up to into the plugin directory, and then we will append build, and it's front. Whoops, that's got to be a string. Build front end.js. The next, we are dependent on a couple of things being there. So this is an array that contains our dependencies. There are 2 of them. The first is WP Elements, which is essentially the the WordPress version of React. And then the other one is, it's WP Element and WP Components, which are all of those tasty components that we can use on the back end in the editor, but we're actually going to want to use 1 or 2 of them on the front end here. Then there's a 4th parameter that I don't even remember offhand what it does, and then there is this last one, which is true, which says that it is true that we want this script to load in the footer and not in the header, because we do want it to load in the footer. And the reason is that we want the page to have rendered before we start messing with the page, right? If we try to do things like replace divs before the divs are there, not only does it not work, but like a lot of things in the web, it fails quietly and you don't know what's going on. So we'll get that right. And then this is PHP, so I got to stick come on, gotta stick. Why is this hard? So freaking annoying. There we go. A semicolon. All right, let's save that. And if I've done everything and I've done it right, how likely is that? But if I reload, I'm going to get that alert box. Come on. Yeah, there it is. Good. And that's all it's going to do right now, right? So it's great that it worked, but it's not like super satisfying. But I think that's a good point for us to break segments. And so now we have that front end thing running. We just need to get it actually doing something that changes what's going on the front end in the rendered block. And so we will tackle that in the next segment.